Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, I Fired My Karen Sister-in-Law. After that, he can't play guitar, he's faking it. And after that, leave with the team? Sure thing. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets fired. Can't fire me when I don't even have a job. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. I fired my Karen sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, sister of my late husband, has been providing childcare for my son, who's 10, for the past few years. It's been mostly after school while I work, but now that schools are closed, he's been with her most of the day. I've paid her for babysitting, and that's the bulk of her income. She also sells essential oils through an MLM. But I don't think she makes much money that way. They get along really well. She isn't the problem. But she's recently become involved with a man who's there frequently, and my son can't stand him. I'm with my son on this. The boyfriend calls him a nerd and makes fun of him for loving science. His big thing is telling my son that his military service, we have mandatory male conscription in our country, will toughen him up, and that the officers love breaking weak people. My son is already frightened about the thought of his military service and started having nightmares about it. I asked my sister-in-law not to allow this around my son, but she says he lives with her Tuesday through Friday now. I hadn't heard this before, and I told her that if she wanted to keep watching my son, it was going to need to be at my own home. That went well for a bit, but on Friday, she brought the boyfriend to my house with her. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but he somehow broke one of my son's favorite toys, a custom-made action figure of Odo from DS9. I've had this action figure specially made by an Etsy seller for Christmas last year, since my son loves Odo and there aren't many toys of him available. I can't replace it since the Etsy shop no longer exists. My son is absolutely heartbroken. So I told my sister-in-law that I won't need her to babysit anymore. My daughter is a teenager now, and she's willing to watch her brother until I find another babysitter. My sister-in-law begged me to give her another chance, but I feel that babysitting in my home was the other chance, and she blew it by bringing this jerk over. She says she really needs the money and she wants to fix the relationship with her nephew. She promises she won't let her boyfriend come over again. Am I the jerk for saying no? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know. I don't blame OP one bit. If sister-in-law won't even stick up for her nephew, then she ain't worth a darn. He can't play guitar, he's faking it. I've been browsing this subreddit for a few days now and decided to give my fair share of entitlement. I'm 14 years old and I live in the Netherlands. My English isn't that good, please don't mind it. My father is Dutch and my mom is Vietnamese. I've been playing guitar for over 5 years and I really enjoy doing it. My dad listened to a lot of Dream Theater and grew up with that. I play a lot of progressive metal. This happened last year before lockdown came. I was 14. We had this talent show in the 2nd grade of middle school and I decided to join. I played The Endless Knot by Haken, a great song, with a little improvised solo in the silent piano part near the end. There were no real awards, but it was mostly for enjoyment. There were like 10 other participants. 6 of them were girls that sang, 1 group that danced, 2 comedians, and 1 other guitarist. I won. I was really happy, and the other participants were really nice. I personally found 1 comedian hilarious that had some good jokes. There were a lot of parents that gave me a standing ovation, and it was one of the best moments of my life. My parents weren't there because of work. One of the girls that sang was crying because she hadn't won, and her mom, entitled Mom, came to comfort her. I didn't get a reward, and the talent show was just for entertainment and fun. But this entitled mom was so mad that her daughter didn't win. She went to the jury and said that I faked my guitar playing, although I practiced a lot for it. I got on the stage and she followed me. She started accusing me of faking in front of everyone. First, I thought she knew the song and that it's played on a 7-string guitar. I used an Epiphone Les Paul with single coils and 6 strings. I played the lower part just 1 octave higher and it sounded fine, but she never said anything about that. She also said that a guitar could never make such sounds, and I explained that it was plugged into an amplifier with my self-made pedal board. After that came this ridiculous conversation. The conversation went like this, roughly translated from Dutch. Entitled Mom. How dare you make my daughter cry with that faking of yours? Me. Ma'am, I didn't fake my playing. But a kid like you could never play something like that. There is no explanation. You're faking. Obviously, she didn't have any real arguments. Me. Why would I participate in a talent show without an award and fake something? After that, she went a little quiet. Then prove that you're not faking it. I played a few ladders on high speed and the solo of the song without backing track. At this point, the audience was agreeing with me and they told the lady to please leave the stage. After that, she got into the whole evil thing. I was wearing a Tool shirt with kind of a graphic back. Because you're evil. Me. What? Yes, I see that shirt. It's pure blasphemy. Me. It's a band shirt. They aren't evil. I don't believe it. You're going to manipulate us all with that music of yours. Me. I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm just doing this for fun. Buzz off, you little jerk. Go back to your evilness. Me. I'm getting really upset at this point. I'm not evil, and don't call me any names. Entitled Mom continues her name calling. The jury asked her to please leave the stage. Her daughter tried to stop her mother, but the Entitled Mom kept on going. The daughter was really embarrassed and ran away. The Entitled Mom looked at me and said, "Look what you've done." She approached and tried to attack me, but I just got away from her and she was taken away as she screamed at me. She was banned from the school and never heard of her again. The daughter eventually confronted me at school and apologized. I accepted the apology and we became friends. Went a few times to her house, but never saw her mom. Never asked what happened because I didn't want to think about her anymore. Speaking of guitars, do you play any instruments? And if so, which ones? Please let us know. I play the piano myself. Fur Karen is my favorite piece. Leave with the team? Sure thing. I work for a popular grocery chain that operates in the southeastern United States, where shopping at is supposedly a great time. I've been with the company for 18 years, 4 of them as a department manager before I stepped down due to being a salaried worker that worked ridiculous amounts of overtime without compensation. That was recently dealt with via a class action lawsuit. I still work in the same department in which I was once a manager, so I know just about everything there is to know. If anything goes wrong, I can make it right. If anything breaks, I can fix it. My current manager is an awesome boss that I'd do anything to help out. He understands that his employees are people and not just minions to do his bidding. He's willing to work with you on any schedule needs, so we're all willing to do the same. That being said, about 2 years ago, we were short-handed on employees that were able to close the department, particularly those that could close the kitchen. We talked, and I agreed to close every night for a while until we could get more people on board and trained in the different areas of the department. This went on longer than expected, and he apologized, but I told him not to worry, as I was actually enjoying having a regular schedule, even though the hours weren't ideal. Fast forward a few months, and we're finally staffed properly, and my manager thanks me for my help, and we agree that I'll continue working nights because I like the consistency, and he knows that I'll always make sure everything is set up well for the next morning, and I make his job easier for doing so. During this time, we picked a lot of great workers and a couple awful ones. The great workers were amazing to work with. I called them my A-team, and we'd often get off work 30 to 45 minutes early because we helped each other out and got stuff done. The awful workers took note of willingness to help out and would neglect parts of their closing duties because they knew the A-team would get it done in order to get off ASAP. This goes on for a while and gets worse, reaching a point where the other A-teamers and I talk to our boss and say we don't mind helping people out, but we're done doing other people's jobs for them. He agrees and changes the policy so that once we're done with our sections, we can clock out and leave after being checked out by the manager in charge. The event. Things have been going pretty well, and as long as 2 or more of my A-team workers are closing with me, we're still able to get out early as a team. We always make sure to set up any other closers for success and do any general work like taking out the trash, adjusting inventories, etc. before leaving, but we're still able to leave a little early. This is important because we never have to worry about getting overtime. We have a strict no overtime policy. Even 1 minute of overtime will earn a write-up for the employee and my manager unless approved ahead of time. Then it happens. 3 out of the 4 other A-teamers quit within 2 weeks of each other. One found a better job. One had a family crisis to handle, another moved. I went from working with coworkers that had years of experience in the department to coworkers that have been with the company for less than 6 months for the most part. There are a few coworkers that are approaching their 1-year mark, but I still have more experience than all my fellow closers combined, probably tenfold. Suddenly, instead of getting out early, I'm having to work past my scheduled times on bad nights and barely getting out on time on good nights. I try to manage my own time in order to not have to leave early or come in late, but I've been cutting it close. 3 weeks ago, a particular manager in charge, there's 7 that each have a set night to close, is closing. I'm closing with newbies, and I'm in danger of going into overtime. This is a Thursday night, and while I do close Friday, final day of our week cycle, I make sure to keep some wiggle room in case anything goes wrong on Friday night that keeps me from leaving on time. I finish closing my section, take trash, adjust inventory, and generally help out as much as I can until it's my scheduled time off, at which point I clock out and page my manager in charge to check me out. I'd have paged sooner, but I knew that my section was clear. Again, I've been doing this for a long time and wasn't going to be asked to work off the clock. The following conversation occurs. Manager in charge.
Why are you paging me over here? The others are clearly not finished, and you should be helping them.
Me. I paged you to clear my section so that I can leave and not worry about overtime. I did XYZ to help them out, and all they have left shouldn't take more than 10 minutes or so. Her.
Do you work tomorrow?
Me. Yes, but I'm closing kitchen and always come in early on those days to ensure a smooth transition and make sure I don't fall behind. The little bit of wiggle room I have left to avoid overtime is going to be used for that. Her.
You can't be in danger of overtime if you still have another day to work. You know that the entire department is supposed to leave as a team. You leaving before your coworkers isn't right. I'll let you leave this time, but from now on, you leave with your team.
Side note. This manager in charge came in from a sister store after the fiasco mentioned in the setup. The next day, I talked to my direct manager and asked him how he wants me to handle the situation. He assures me that I did the right thing and was just managing my own time in order to avoid overtime. He knows that I always try to set everyone up for success. The entire reason I'm still closing 5 nights a week is for this very purpose after all. I should also mention that on this particular night, with said manager in charge, I left the department a fair number of times to do extra work, get trucks from the back, clean up the back room of cardboard and trash, take out old grease to the canister outside, etc. And she came looking for me while I was doing the side jobs on 2 occasions. On the second occasion, she told me that she wanted me to alert her anytime I'm going to leave the department so she'd know my whereabouts. I thought it was odd, since no one else had to do this, but whatever. I later learned that she told my manager that I was taking entirely too many smoke breaks. I take 2 a day, as per company policy, and said that I wasn't doing what I said I was doing for the side work and just using them for extra breaks. I sighed internally and had an idea. It was time for some malicious compliance. Every night that this manager in charge has closed, I've had a great time complying to her wishes. First, every time I leave the department, she knows. Going to the restroom? Paged. Lunch break? Paged. Taking cardboard to the baler? Running trash? Having to help a customer outside my department? Paged, paged, paged. She's gotta know where I am, right? Secondly, I still refuse to put myself in danger of overtime while also refusing to work off of the clock. So what happens? I punch out at my scheduled time no matter what, and then I'm on my own time. I sit down at my manager's desk, pull up other malicious compliance stories from this sub or YouTube, and start enjoying malicious compliance posts at full volume while my coworkers continue to finish up around me. Last week, she sees me on my phone. Her.
What exactly are you doing? There's still more work to be done. Don't you see your coworkers still working? Why are you just sitting there?
Me. I've already done my work, helped out as much as I could, but still had to clock out on time. I'm just here waiting for them to finish so we can leave as a team. That's what you wanted, right? The fallout. Nothing spectacular yet. She gives me the stink eye every now and again when she sees me, and I simply smirk back at her. She tried complaining to my manager, but he always has my back. I even shared with him that I've considered further malicious compliance if she keeps pushing me by keeping her updated on my whereabouts even when she's not the manager in charge. I'm keeping that one up my sleeve for the time being. She never stated that my updates were needed only when she was the manager in charge, so I'm just waiting for her to try something else. Have you ever had a manager that kept getting on your nerves? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. You get on my nerves, but you're not my manager or anything. Front seat. My wife and I live 15 hours away from my family. This is so that she can be close to her family and so that I don't have to deal with mine on the daily basis. The other day, about a week or two ago, we decided to visit my family. When we get there, everything is going great. We're all getting along and happy to see each other. About 3 hours into our visit, I decided to show my wife around my hometown. She had never visited before and had only met my folks once at our wedding. Both of my parents volunteered to tag along just in case I get lost. I hadn't been back home in years and some of the roads had been changed. We agreed that it was a good idea and started to load up in my car. As I started to buckle up, I noticed my mother is getting into the front passenger seat. I stopped and looked to my wife, who was staring at my mother with a confused expression. Mom? I said, trying to sound polite because I know the slightest thing can set her off. Can you hop in the back? That's my wife's seat, and she gets car sickness if she's in the back. My mother scoffs and rolls her eyes at me. She can just sit in the back seat, she said, exasperated, as if she had explained this thousands of times to me. We won't be gone long, so she won't get car sick. Now, my wife can get car sick from a 3-minute drive if she's in the back seat, especially when she's around strangers. And yes, my folks are strangers to her. Taking all of this into consideration, I quickly pipe up and say, so can you. I'm not arguing with you on this, Mom. This is my car, and I want my wife to enjoy being able to look around where I grew up. She scoffs again and turns to me and says, with the most condescending tone I've ever heard, You won't mind if I take this seat, will you? He's my baby boy, and I haven't been able to see him since you heartlessly took him away from me. Luckily, my wife and I didn't have to do anything because my hero of a father jumped in and told my mother to get out of the car. He isn't the type to deal with BS, and my mother knows this. She quickly hopped out and turned to get into the back seat. I sighed in relief for a moment until my father stopped her. We are not going with them, he said, anger very evident on his face as he stepped in front of my mother. We need to talk about how you treat our daughter. You see, my mother has never liked my wife, where my father treats her no different from many of my siblings and I. Needless to say, an argument broke out and my wife and I left without seeing the town. Edit. Thank you so much for the upvotes. I didn't think this would blow up like this. Since this has gained so many upvotes, I thought it would be fine to tell y'all something that I find hilarious. If you read the comments below, you would have noticed that I have said, if my father wasn't married, I could see him taking my mother-in-law out for drinks. This is mostly due to the fact that other than these two getting along so well, my father-in-law is just like my mother, and my mother-in-law is just like my father. My wife and I always make the comparison between the two, because just like my father, my mother-in-law accepted me into their family once she got to know me. Now, admittedly, she didn't accept me right off the bat, and even grilled me for months, thinking I was just like my wife's ex, and only accepted me when she saw how I treated my wife with respect. My father, on the other hand, started joking, and still does, about how if we ever get divorced, he's keeping my wife as his daughter and getting rid of me the day he met her. Am I the jerk for building a fence on my property and not allowing my neighbor to hang stuff on it or paint it? This will probably be rather short, and I'm not sure if it's worth posting, but I really need to get a read on whether I am being the jerk or not. So here goes. I bought a house with a big yard several months ago. It's my very first house and the most expensive thing I've ever owned. Prior to this, I've only ever lived in apartments, and the dynamic between neighbors seems really different, which is another reason I am asking. When I moved here, there was a very old rotten wooden fence on the property separation line between me and my new neighbor's property. I wanted to replace it from the start, however, I decided to focus on the house first. You know, the usual stuff. Fixing up what needed fixing up. Painting, flooring, moving in the furniture, and so on before focusing on the yard. Now, the guy who owned my house before was an old man, and because of his age, the yard had not seen much work done for what I assume were several years. So it has been a lot of work fixing up the yard. About a month ago, I finally got some time to replace the fence. I went over to the neighbor's house, talked about replacing the fence, and if he was going to split the cost with me, but he would have none of it. He said the fence was fine, and he has no issue with no fence. so if I want to remove it, I should go ahead, but he was not giving me a dime to replace it. It's worth adding that the previous fence was completely on my property and purchased completely by the previous owner. The neighbor has no claim on it. While I was a bit weirded out by his response, I decided to just finance the fence myself and install it myself. Being quite a few bucks and a lot of hard work later, I am now the proud owner of a nice, tall wooden fence. I need to point out, just to make this clear, I paid for it entirely. I put it up myself. I removed the old fence on my own, and the fence is entirely on my side of the property line. I came home from work a few days ago to find my fence on the neighbor's side entirely filled with plant pots. The border also filled with all sorts of plants, and he had painted it. I went over to my neighbor and demanded he take all of it down, alongside demanding he'd get his sand grinder and take the paint off of my fence as well. After all, you don't want to pay for it. You don't get to paint it or hang anything on it, for that matter, plant stuff in my yard. As I said, the fence is entirely on my property, so the border of his yard where he planted stuff is also mine. He laughed at me and essentially told me to buzz off. Well, I went back there, tossed all of his crap off my fence, pulled all of his plants out and tossed them in his yard, and painted the side towards his fence an obnoxious bright yellow. I have since had him raging at my door. His kids came over to yell at me as they had worked for hours on it, and well, here we are. I'm wondering whether I am the jerk, as I might have gone too far. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his neighbor? Please let us know. I might have gone with a lime green color myself. Ken, you're asking the wrong department. And I don't work here. Just came from a big orange tools store and was in the tools aisle. Now there was an actual employee in the aisle next to mine helping another customer. Then another man walks up. Let's say he is the male Karen, Ken. Now this part I didn't see, but the employee claims he tapped her shoulder while she was speaking to the customer she was helping. She tells him she will get to him in a moment. He gets impatient and huffs and puffs for a minute. I could actually hear him doing this where I was. She unfortunately interrupts the first customer to ask Ken, "What do you need?" No, "How may I help you?" or "Do you need help?" Nope. Ken deservingly got the retail version of "buzz off" from her. He then asks her what he needs to make a bell siphon. Now for those who don't know, this is a plumbing device used to automatically suck water out with no mechanics like pumps when water gets to certain levels. She tells him that she doesn't know and he needs to go to plumbing. She then turns back to help the first customer. Ken gets mad and says she needs to help him. She turns back around and says, "I don't work in the plumbing department. All I know about what you're asking is siphon is something for water. That's plumbing, this is tools." He gets mad and storms off, which is where I now come in. He sees me. I'm wearing nothing that says I work there other than blue jeans. He walks up and says, "Tell me what I need to make a bell siphon." I would have helped him had he not just demanded that. So I tell him I don't work for the tool store and he needed to ask the plumbing department employee. He says, "I see you in here all the time. You all need to stop lying to your customers." I say okay and go back to what I was looking at in the tools department. He goes to some other employee and demands to see the manager. The manager comes over and tells him exactly what we both told him. He was asking the wrong department and I didn't work there. The manager did also say he knew how to make it and asked the man for his project measurements so he could get the right size pipes for him. Ken had to go home and get them because he never bothered to do that before coming to the store for the parts. Am I the jerk for telling my friend, a nurse, that her opinion is not worth as much as a doctor's? A group of friends and I were out today when one mentioned she wouldn't be able to make our upcoming lunch plans because she had a doctor's appointment. Someone else asked if she was all right, and she explained she had been having some minor symptoms and just figured she'd get it checked out because she has a family history of various genetic diseases, so likes to be extra cautious. One of the other people in the group, who happens to be an RN, asked her a bit more about her symptoms and background, then told her not to worry, that it was not anything serious and she should cancel her doctor's appointment. I trust and respect my friend, the nurse. However, I know nothing about her competence as a professional, and if my friend with the symptoms felt so strongly about what she was experiencing that she went out of her way to take off work and make a doctor's appointment, it seemed ridiculous to me that she wouldn't go based on that quick discussion with someone who hasn't treated her and didn't go to medical school with a specialty in the area of concern. My friend with the symptoms said she'd canceled the appointment but seemed hesitant, so I spoke up and basically said, "Look, with all due respect, you're not her doctor, so I really think she, the doctor, needs to be the one to make that determination." My friend said, "Oh, I'm a nurse. I see this kind of thing all the time. That's definitely what it is. You can treat it with something over the counter." I told my friend one more time for good measure that she should do whatever makes her most comfortable, and if she thought she needed an appointment before, there's no reason to cancel it now. I also said something to the effect of, "A nurse is great, but that's not the same as a doctor who specializes in your area of concern," and she was just lucky to now have an extra bonus opinion. Our friend, who's the nurse, got very offended, saying it's wrong of me to try and discount her opinion just because she didn't go to a fancy A school and I was being extremely rude, etc. Now, a couple of other friends who were present are suggesting I'm the jerk for having said anything because it was disrespectful to our nurse friend who was just trying to be helpful. And if the one with the symptoms didn't trust her diagnosis, she was free to keep her appointment, so did not need my input. I feel that our friend was being pressured into accepting the hastily offered diagnosis, so it was necessary for me to reassure her that it was okay to still see the doctor, and she wouldn't be offending anyone or doing anything wrong by us. But apparently, that might have been incorrect of me, on both counts. So now I'm worried that I'm the jerk. I didn't mean to be a jerk, and I certainly didn't mean to make things harder on my friend, but now I'm worried I've done both. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the nurse? Please let us know. If the nurse wants to give medical advice, perhaps she should have gone to medical school. Mom begs for money despite buying new house and car. A little backstory. My mom, who is on SSDI, top tier, almost $2,800 a month, has a very hard time budgeting. Last year, she decided to sell my grandparents' house in Oregon to move back to the Seattle area. She got the house by having my grandma with dementia change the will and cut out her two siblings, my uncle and aunt. And after my grandma passed, the house and all the savings/belongings went to my mom. So she sells the house, and instead of buying a reasonable home, she has limited mobility, lots of prescriptions, and falls often. She buys herself and her 3 cats a 4,000 square foot home in a gated community. There was literally no money left over from the sale/acquisition of the new home. I had to help by paying for a moving van and helpers. Before this, she had a settlement from a slip/fall lawsuit of roughly $50,000, which she instantly rolls into a brand new 2018 Toyota Highlander. She had been left my grandma's 2013 Aspen SUV, but the gas mileage was not good enough. Then she backs into a tree and busts a taillight on her new car a few months after buying it. Goes to the dealership to fix the taillight. Decides she needs a brand new 2019 fully loaded Highlander with a tow package, which she has nothing to tow, so this is a mystery. She trades in her 2018 with 5,000 miles on it and takes out a $35,000 car loan, and this is on a fixed income, and she always has money struggles. So here's like $80,000 of car at this point. Excellent. She's constantly begging my bro, sis, and I for money. We are 38, brother, 36, me, 27, sister, and all trying to establish ourselves in our lives, careers, and financial security. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids. We live off my husband's income as an apprentice tradesman and have to be very frugal. We qualify to live in low-income housing, and I find ways to be resourceful, like donating our time and vehicle to help a local food bank, so we are able to get some food as well as help the community. We don't own a home or brand new fancy cars, and if you take away rent and do the math for just us 2 adults, we live on less than her monthly SSDI. Yet every month she has a sad story about how she can't afford X or Y. She finally canceled her $175 a month TV plan. I've asked her more times than I can count to please not bring up money matters with me. I've offered to help her budget, but she refuses the help, only wants money. Well, she brought up money the other day when she came over to our apartment to visit the grandkids, but really she came to pilfer the food bank transportation we do every Sunday before we drop off at the food bank, saying she didn't have enough money to pick up her prescriptions. This is just after she told me she gets her prescriptions in the mail. I think she has dementia. I told her I could spare $15 for gas money, but that was all. I explained we are a family of 4 living on 1 income and we have a tight budget. I remind her she has had plenty of opportunities to save or spend her money more wisely, so she takes the $15 and goes. I get a call the next day of her crying, saying that the way I brought up her poor money choices was terribly upsetting, pretty much making me out to be the villain and her the victim. This self-victimizing routine is her go-to. It's exhausting because I've done so much for her. I put my life on hold for 5 years after college to be her full-time caretaker. She fell and needed a hip replacement. I couldn't hold down a job or any healthy relationships because I was constantly being called back home to get this/that for her, take her to doctor's appointments, etc. I could literally write a novel in all the ways I've helped her. I feel like this post is a novella. Anyways, forget her for trying to make me out to be the bad guy because I don't give her money to get extra prescriptions to fuel her addiction. Forget her for even putting it out there and begging my family for money when she has so much. And lastly, forget her for never respecting my boundaries, which I need to preserve my well-being. After her sob story phone call, I was upset and it took me a few hours to get my head on straight. I wasn't a good mom to my kids at the time. So to be a better mom to my kids, I'm putting old mom in timeout. I need a break from her entitled self. End rant. Thank you and good night. Would you give your parents money if they had bad spending habits? And why or why not? Please let us know. Who are you to decide whether I have bad spending habits or not? Come watch this video next, you're gonna love it. Please support our channel by joining as a member today and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video that you'd like, just head over to our Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.